Good evening. Welcome to the Lewiston City Council regular meeting of Monday, January 27th. First order of business would be the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask you all to stand and let Councilor Maldonado lead us. Gentlemen, please remove your caps. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on agenda items or other items they wish to bring to the attention of the council. You're encouraged to discuss operational issues in advance with the city manager. And please, in consideration of others wishing to speak, please try and limit your remarks to, 3 minutes or so. Before I ask for public comments, we have a full house tonight, and I'm assuming a lot of it's over our public hearings. So if I could, I'd like to request that if you could hold your comments, if you're here for the public hearings, hold them until such time that we call for the public testimony on the public hearings. That being said, do we have any public comments tonight? Please state your name and record or address for the record.
John Michael, 1448 8th Street, Lewiston, Idaho.
Do I need to do that again?
Did you catch that?
Yeah, John Michael, 1448 8th Street, Lewiston. I know you guys are involved with a lot of committees, but I think I have an idea for another one. I'd like to see a committee set up that meets with the tribe or members of the tribe on a regular basis, not only for intercultural communication, but also because I think it would be a good way to promote tourism. Chief Joseph is an internationally historical figure that's known internationally, and you come through Lewiston and you don't see his face anywhere. You can't buy a T-shirt. I think we have a lot in common historically, and if we worked with that group, then it would be benefit both folks. That's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments? Okay, no takers. We'll move on to public hearings and presentations. First public hearing is VA 1-14. It's a vacation. The applicants Norman and Barbara Rogers. There's a request for the vacation of a 55-foot long portion of the 16-foot wide alley that runs from the north right-of-way line at 17th Avenue. Mr. Plaskin. Now you. Mr. Hayhurst.
Good evening. Believe it or not, I'm actually excited to be here tonight. I see a lot of new faces up here. Last time I was before council was with the old group, and I'm excited to see you guys here, and I'd like to just take half a minute and commend you for wanting to be on the city council. It's a big job. It's a tough job. And I appreciate what you do. And I just want you to know that my wife and I pray for you guys on a regular basis.
Thank you, sir.
And that's serious. I mean that. So. Tonight I'd like to start by reviewing our vacation process. There may be some of you new on the council that have not, that really don't know much about this process. And I thought I would take a minute or two, with permission of the city manager, to fill you in on what the process really is and how it works. And that will help launch me into this particular vacation public hearing that we have tonight. In the city of Lewiston, we have an ordinance for the right-of-way and plat vacations. Okay. Lewiston Code sections 31-100 through 114 and Idaho state statutes allow for the vacation of public rights of way and plats. In general, the vacation process allows a landowner to petition the city council to vacate a public street right-of-way that is adjacent to their property, or vacate a plat that created lots and blocks within a piece of property that they own. The vast majority of vacation requests in Lewiston are for the vacation of public street or alley right-of-ways. The process for a vacation of public right-of-way in Lewiston is as follows. The landowner schedules a meeting with the Public Works Director, and they discuss the vacation request. The Public Works Director gives the landowner information on the right-of-way that is proposed to be vacated and tells the landowner of any reason why the city may not want to vacate the right-of-way. If the landowner decides to proceed with the vacation request, he submits a notice to file a vacation petition with a current fee. Public Works staff then solicits comments from other city departments, including the fire and police departments, utility companies, the school district, the solid waste firm handling garbage collection. Staff then sends a letter to the landowner that states how feasible the vacation is and whether or not the Public Works Director will recommend approval of the vacation request. So at that point, we just passed a new vacation ordinance late last year, and it provides a lot of benefits that the old one didn't have, the old ordinance. One of which is 2 different times when you can bail out if you're a landowner in the vacation process without paying the complete fee. So we believe it's a good improvement. From there on, if the landowner decides to proceed, he submits a vacation petition with the current fee. Public Works staff posts the proposed area to be vacated with signs. The Public Works Director completes a vacation staff report to be presented to council. The city manager schedules a public hearing before the city council. The city clerk notifies by certified mail all landowners within 300 feet of the proposed vacation that a public hearing is scheduled and places a hearing notice in the newspaper. The city council hears the testimony given at the public hearing and makes a decision to either approve with conditions, or deny the vacation request. If approved or approved with conditions, the city attorney prepares a resolution for the mayor to sign. The resolution is then recorded at the county courthouse. The landowners adjacent to the vacated right-of-way take possession of the vacated land as specified by the council decision. Idaho State Code 5311 says, whenever any street, avenue, alley, or lane shall be vacated, the same shall revert to the owner of the adjacent real estate, 1/2 on each side thereof, or as the city council deems in the best interests of the adjoining properties. So that last part says you actually have the discretion to determine where the vacated property goes, so, should you so choose to do that. So, all right. With that, I'll go into the public hearing for the Norman and Barbara Rogers vacation request. Location of this is, it's a portion of the public right-of-way for an alley located in Block 4, University 3rd Edition. Generally, the location is a 55-foot long portion of the 16-foot wide alley that runs north from the north right-of-way line of 17th Avenue. The portion of the alley to be vacated is directly across the street from 410 and 414 17th Avenue. Okay, now that I've said that, I'll really show you where it's at and show you some images here. I believe you have 1 or 2 in your packet. I've got some additional ones that may allow you to clue into the location a little bit better. All right. As you can see on this, to locate you, north is to the top of the, am I upside down? Sorry. Okay, I really want to confuse everybody here. Okay, now we've got it correct. North is to the upside here of the piece of paper. We've got Snake River Avenue, we got Southway Avenue, we got the cemetery grounds up in here. This vacation is this tiny little red area that I've got marked, right in there marked vacation. It's a very small part of an alleyway that was platted in there. This is another GIS image. If you can see the red circle around the outside here, that's the area where the certified letters were sent to the surrounding landowners. Everyone within that got a certified letter stating that this public hearing tonight was going to happen. So they could show up and testify if they wanted to. The next one I have here is a detailed image of the actual block. You can see that there's an alleyway that crosses up here, goes east-west, and then it goes north-south here. Now, the portion that they're requesting to be vacated is this little portion from here down to here on 17th Avenue. So this alley, this is the extent of this entire alley. It just comes over and then comes to the south. There's four owners that the right-of-way affects. There's the applicant, Mr. Rogers here. There's the neighbor, Kent Bostrom. He also supports the vacation. And then there are the two neighbors up in here, landowners, and I'm hoping they're here to speak tonight for themselves. This image is when you're standing on 17th Avenue and you're looking straight north. You're looking this section right in here of ground. This is the alleyway to be vacated. I'd ask you to remember how this structure sits here, because that'll be a reference for the next couple of photos. This property over here is owned by Mr. Rogers. This is his shed back here, a garage. This is owned by Mr. Bostrom over here. This fence that's across the back is on the back side of the alley that goes east-west. The alley in front of that will still stay as public alleyway in this. It'll only be vacated from basically the corner of Mr. Rogers' garage here out to the street. Here's a photo with my back against that gray metal building that I showed you. So this is looking down the alley toward the west. This is the back of Mr. Rogers' garage there. You can see there are some signs of use in the alley there, and the trash cans. This is basically toward the west end of the alley, looking back east. So again, that's that, I guess it's a tan shop back there of Mr. Bostrom's. And again, the red garage for Mr. Rogers. I'm trying to give you as much of a visual as I can so you can understand the true situation there. So we'll move on into the narrative here. This action would vacate a small portion of the public alley that has rarely been used in the past. It would vacate only the north-south portion of the alley, leaving the east-west portion of the alley intact. The petitioner is requesting this vacation to allow them to control unauthorized access to the rear of his and his neighbors' properties. They believe that the instances of loitering and theft that have occurred here can be reduced by installing a fence with a locked gate. So that would be their intention, is to install a fence with a gate along the north end of the vacated alleyway. I have some new information I'd like to add tonight. A neighbor of Mr. Rogers visited me just last week and told me that some of the landowners in the neighborhood regularly drive through the portion of the alley that is proposed to be vacated. I believe that the gentleman is here tonight to speak for himself. And I wanted to read the more detailed request part of the applicant, or the application from the applicant. Mr. Rogers sent this in. I wanted to read it in its entirety for you tonight. We have lived here for almost 30 years, and the alley has not been used by any utility company and never maintained by the city. The main reason for this request is that the last couple of years, we, the Rogers and Bostroms, have encountered people driving behind our garages and stealing things. Anything metal that can be sold. Also, for the last 30 years, I had to keep the weeds killed out and mowed down and keep all the leaves and debris picked up that collects behind the garage. The city has never kept that portion up. It has been left up to us. We also are not happy about people driving back there at night and shutting down their cars and just sitting. I have to tell them to move on several times. It just appears that they are waiting to take something when all looks okay for them. The land could be put to much better use by both parties. History of the plat, or the alleyway that was platted. The land in this area was subdivided by the University 3rd Edition plat in 1905. So it's been there for a long time. This plat contained the dedication of the alley to be vacated. Discussion. The only known utility existing in the right-of-way to be vacated is an overhead secondary power line owned by Avista Utilities. Avista's comment stated that the line must stay in place to serve homes on the south side of 17th Avenue. CenturyLink and Cable One may or may not have utility lines in the area, and both companies want to preserve their right to install, maintain, and access existing and future utilities. CenturyLink specifically commented that they would not support the vacation unless a full-width public utility and access easement is reserved. If the council chooses to approve the proposed right-of-way vacation with a reserved public utility and access easement over the property, the owners of the vacated property can still pursue future development plans that would require the relocation of the utilities and easement. This would be accomplished by completing the required approval processes through both the city and the franchise utility companies and paying the costs of the relocations. The right-of-way proposed to be vacated is 890 square feet in area, with an approximate value of $1,600 based on the Nez Perce County assessment value of the two residential properties adjacent to the right-of-way to be vacated. As you can see in the aerial images, the alley will become a dead end if this vacation request is approved. The city usually discourages the creation of dead-end alleys and streets, although dead ends do exist throughout the city. In the analysis done by Public Works staff, the reasoning for allowing this to become a dead-end alley included the following. 1, the alley is short, approximately 160 feet is all. The alley is used for garbage pickup and overhead utility access by backing into or out of the alley. And I note that both Sunshine Disposal and Avista do not oppose the vacation. The 90-degree corner there, where the north-south section runs into the east-west, didn't allow for any kind of large vehicles to use the alley as a through alley. Because a 16-foot wide alley with a 90-degree corner in it is very difficult to get any kind of vehicle of any size around that corner. And 3, the alley is used for access to only 4 lots. With this said, 2 of the landowners with property along the alley may use the north-south alley access on a regular basis. I hope that these landowners are here tonight and will voice their opinions and concerns. I would like to add at this time that the following departments and agencies had an opportunity to review this vacation request and responded that they either had no comment or had no objection. The Community Development Director, the City Planner, the Lewiston Transit Department, the Fire Department, the Police Department, the City Water and Wastewater Manager, the City Attorney, the Street Maintenance Manager, Sunshine Disposal, the Parks and Rec Department, the Stormwater Program Coordinator, and the School District. Recommendations. Staff has considered all the comments received from other departments, governmental agencies, and utility companies regarding this vacation and recommends that the City Council approve this right-of-way vacation with the condition that a public utility and access easement be reserved over the entire area being vacated to accommodate existing utilities and future utility installations. This recommendation is given to council because staff has determined that this section of alley right-of-way is not required for city purposes or emergency access, and a utility easement would be sufficient for the public utility use of this area. Staff would urge the council to listen carefully to any public testimony concerning private use of the alley before making a final decision. That's my presentation. Is there
Thank you.
any questions I can
Any
answer at this
questions?
time?
I got a question.
Counselor Daniel.
Yes.
17th Ave there, is that, it's been a long time since I've been down there. Is that one way? Is that,
That's a very narrow one-way street toward the west.
okay, so anybody getting on the alleyway from 4th Street would just be coming back around to 4th Street if they were just using it?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Hayers.
Thank you.
Stick around. Is the applicant here? Welcome, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Norman Rogers at 1619 4th Street. I'm the applicant, and I guess Mr. Hayhurst gave a good presentation. I can't hear too good, kind of half deaf. But anyway, the main reason we're making an application for the right-of-way vacation is Mr. Bostrom and I have been struggling with theft in the last couple, 3 years. And I've had a tiller stole. He's had some stuff stolen. I've had a radiator stolen, some wheels and tires stolen. And we'd like to stop people from going in behind there. I've had to go out at night. I see guys driving behind there. I see no car come out or pick up. And then I go back there and I have to run them off because they're back there up to no good. And I ask them, would you please move on? I know you're no need to sit here and talk. And that's the main reason. We've lived there for about 30 years. And I took care of the back there, cutting down grass and weeds. For 3 years, I had a garden back there, trying to keep it down and make it look decent. The city has never put any gravel in there. It's all dirt. And behind the garage, running east to west, is where all of the utilities come up. The garbage truck comes up to the end of my garage, loads up and backs out. And they never come through there because it's too sharp a corner for the big rigs to turn and go around, and they just have to double back. And we've had stuff stacked in there for many years, and nothing has ever been questioned about it. Phone company, power company, garbage company has always just come up on that back alley on the north side of our garage and done their work there on the power pole that you can see in the picture, and left, just backed out and left. But that has never been used by any of the utilities for any reason in 30 years that I've been there. And I was hoping Mr. Bostrom would be here, but he hasn't, didn't show up tonight. He's been working at night.
Okay,
And I thank the council very much.
you bet. And you stick around too. We'll take some testimony here. Okay, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this application?
I'm Kent Bostrom, 414 16th Avenue. And I am in favor of Norm having the property. And the rigs that try to go through there, garbage trucks, utility trucks, they can't make that corner. It's just too sharp of a corner. His shop is right on the property line, and they can't make that corner. So rarely, I've been there for 10 years, and I've seen, I think, a guy on the corner drive through there maybe half a dozen times, and he's the only one I've ever seen drive through there. So, like he said, we've had things stolen out of the back, and I think having a fence across the back would help deter people from coming through there. And with it being a one-way on 17th Avenue, it doesn't do any good to, you're just making a loop is all you're doing. So I think having that cut off or closed off through there would help Norm and I both deter the theft.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of the request? Anybody opposed?
My name's Doyle Lawrence. I live at 404 16th Avenue. It's right on the corner of the alleyway. I use that alley a lot. He said 4 to 6 times or whatever I've been through there. I was through there 4 times today. I use that alley because if I don't, I have to back a trailer up out into the middle of 4th Street to get turned around to head to the dump. I take my trailer, which is a 2-yarder, behind my pickup around that corner that's in that alley. I see no reason to shut us off from going through that alley. The neighbors use it also. My sons, when they come down to borrow the trailer, to bring it back, to get the lawnmower, etc., they use it. And the only problems we've had is people parking in that section right there. I went down to the city because we've been fighting it for years. I went down to the city and found that they had split. What the deal was is Steve Campbell, who I dealt with a lot when I went down there, he'd come up and make them move trailers, move cars, pickups, even roofing that's stacked up in there. So he's moved it several times. Well, now he retired, and then Alan Johnson took over. And when he took over to the city police, they transferred all the paperwork down there. Well, when they got it, they had an enormous amount. And so they shredded a lot of it, most of it, that they didn't think that they needed. What is still on there is in July of 2012, where they come up and they had to open the alley again. Also, I believe it was September 20th, 2013, again, he had to come up and have a trailer moved out of there so that we could utilize the alley. We do use this alley, and there's no need that I can see to close it off. It had just put me at jeopardy trying to back out into 4th Street with a trailer.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else in opposition?
Good evening. My name is Ann Bogar. I live at 408 16th Avenue. This alley we're talking about directly affects my parking. That's how I get to my driveway. That's how I get to my parking. This property has been in my family for 53 years. And we've always entered, up until the last several years, off of 17th Avenue into the alley into my property. The only other way I can get off of 4th Street into the alley into my property. I have been down to the city several times complaining and having them open up this alley so where I could get through. I've had Steve Campbell come up and talk to Mr. Rogers. He will move things for a while and then put things back. I've had the police department come up and ask him to move things. Things will be moved for a short period of time, and then things, roofing, railroad ties, will be put back in there. These should be on record. I don't understand how this has gone on this long. I thought the matter was taken care of once I turned it over to the city, talked to the police. They assured me it would be taken care of. The woman at Mr. Campbell's office informed me that they had sent several letters to Mr. Rogers instructing him to move the things out of the alleyway so we could get through. Like I said, this is how I get to my driveway and my property. I don't understand how this has got this far. I asked Mr. Lawrence next to me. He went down to get all the records of how many times we'd been down to Mr. Campbell's office and to the police department, and they've either been shredded or they were left on a pickup, in their pickup, and never got put into the records. Somebody's not doing their job. This has been going on. I was born and raised at this house. I moved back there in 2006 to take care of my father. Since then, there's been numerous occasions. Like I said, I've talked to Mr. Campbell, had him come up, the police department come up. I've talked to Norm myself. This should have been taken care of by the city. Now it's a problem between neighbors. Now there's tension between our neighbors because Norm is directly behind me. They're good people. Why are we fighting over a public piece of property that the only reason we can't use is because he keeps plugging it up? This is ridiculous. It's a waste of time. This matter should not even be before us right now. We turned the problem over to the city, had them come up several times, mail him letters. I thought it was taken care of, and here we are now. It's ridiculous. I use that. I want to use that. My kids use that to come and see me. I have 3 daughters in the valley. I have 4 grandchildren. They come to see me all the time. They pull in, oh, Norm's stuff is there. They've got to back out again. This is a public alley. Leave it that way, please. This is how I get to my property. It's my parking. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Let's see. Well, at this time, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Hayhurst, could you come down and maybe address some of these concerns?
Yeah, I'll do my best, Mr. Mayor. I guess first thing I'll say is that the vacation process really is set up so that if anyone wants to request a vacation of a public right-of-way, they're welcome to do so. That's the way it's set up. In the process that I go through, and in our ordinance and the way it's been forever, as far as I know, of vacations, we never have taken the step of trying to go to court to code enforcement to find out if there's been any violations in the past. And really, when you think about it, that doesn't have much to do with the vacation request, because what we're determining at the time is, can this public right-of-way be vacated? Are there utilities in there? Is it part of the master plan for improved traffic in the city, and so forth? So, and I can tell you in this case, when Mr. Lawrence came in last week, that's the first I was really aware that there was any problems with access and that it was still being used very much. Some of the photos I have here, if you look closely, you can see that there are tire tracks. I mentioned that. There are some tire tracks. I didn't know who was making them, anything like that, or, so I would just say that I guess that's what this public hearing is for.
Okay.
Is to hear from people in the neighborhood that may have, concerns like this, like what we've heard tonight.
Okay.
So I can say that from the city's viewpoint, from our use of the alley, from utilities' use of the alley, and it's not required to remain a public alley if we keep a utility easement through there. But again, I would just urge you to listen to the concerns of the whole neighborhood. And is there any other questions?
Any questions?
If you want me to show any of the images or the photos or anything, again, I can do that if that would help.
Just one
Yes,
question.
Councilman.
In the process of putting together this report, you don't actually contact the 1, 2, 3. There's 4 residences boarding that alleyway. There actually is no attempt by the city to contact any of those people directly.
There is not during the main part of the process. That is why we send out certified letters to everyone within 300 feet. Because we don't know if, like in this situation, for all I know, there could be someone who uses that alley that doesn't even live in this block. I don't know. And that's what this is all about, is to find out those concerns.
And just to go along that, there's no precedent. Is there a precedent? I'm being the newbie on the block here. Is there a precedent when we ask for an alley vacation that if someone is opposed to it, that's not an automatic feature where we're not going to discuss it anymore? I mean, I was always under the impression everybody had to be in agreement.
That the ordinance and the statutes, the state statutes require that if anyone that actually abuts, if your property abuts the portion of the alley to be vacated, then you need to sign a letter of consent. There are some other exceptions to that rule, but mainly, like in this case, the section of alley being vacated is only adjacent to Mr. Rogers and Mr. Bostrom's property. That's all. If we would have been vacating that entire alley or trying to, we would have had to have a consent letter, or Mr. Rogers would have had to have gotten a consent letter from everyone in the whole block, including the last two landowners that you just heard from.
Thank you.
So the way the system has been is that we are not aware of some things until the very end, at this hearing. Now, I want to say one more thing about our new ordinance. I've been talking that up. But our new ordinance actually requires the posting of the property. The old one did not. So we're going to post that as early as we can in the process. So anyone using any right-of-way that's proposed to be vacated will have an earlier warning and be able to get their input in sooner.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Within the history, it's indicated that it was subdivided and the plat was dedicated to be vacated since 1905. Is there a reason why that entire alley hasn't been vacated, or request for vacation even part of it up until now?
I've been with the city for 2006. This is the first time that it's been brought up that I'm aware of for vacation. So I'm not aware of any other times that there was a request made to vacate that. And that east-west portion of the alley, Public Works would not recommend a vacation of that portion because it is access to the back of these properties. It's used by solid waste disposal to get in there to pick up the garbage. And also Avista has an overhead utility with a pole back in that corner, and they have to have access to the pole. They don't need this little portion of alley that's proposed to be vacated for access to that pole.
Anything else? Well, council, we've heard public testimony, we've heard the staff report. We have a motion to approve, deny this vacation?
Yes, I'll go.
Certainly, Councilor Daniel.
I move we deny the vacation.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Please.
When the hearing first started, it did make a lot of sense. I was thinking it's a one-way street. It wouldn't make much sense if you were coming from 4th Street just to make a loop. But I was, after hearing the last two landowners talk, this alleyway is being used according to them, and it is really close to their property. According to them, it would have a negative impact on them by doing this, and it already is public. And I think in this case, I would support leaving it public.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, it seems like we're maybe being drawn into a little neighborhood squabble that possibly actually it sounds like possibly the police department needs to become possibly involved with down the road if the actual alleyway is truly being blocked for public use. And so just want to say, I don't know. I agree with Councilor Daniels here.
Okay. Anything else? Please.
Make one more. I just want to echo those comments. If there is a theft issue going on there, it'd be good for the police department to look into it.
Okay. Well, I could support the applicant, and I could support the denial, based on the testimony. I do get down there every now and then, but I guess I'd never really thought about that being a kind of a thoroughfare. I guess I have a tough time with people talking about pulling trailers in and out, because if you can't get a garbage truck in there, it's got to be tough to pull a trailer around that corner and back in, but that is what it is. Anything else? Okay, those in favor of the vacation, say aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay? Okay. Vacation fails. Should we do it 7-0? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. Next item is acceptance or rejection of the jurisdiction on appeal. There's an appeal, AP 01-13. This is the time for the council to decide whether to accept or reject jurisdiction of appeal filed in opposition to Planning and Zoning Commission's approval of a conditional use permit to construct a multifamily housing complex in the R2 zoning district on approximately 10 acres on the west side of 17th Street, north side of Stewart, and the south side of Vineyard Drive. And this was conditional use 07-13. Jamie, since this is the first time I've seen one of these, we just need to have a straight up and down vote on whether to accept the,
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, your city zoning code, section 37-185, allows the city council to accept or reject appeals. If you were to accept the appeal, you would go forward with a public hearing. If you rejected the appeal, the appellant would then have a certain number of days by statute to file for a judicial review.
okay. So just call for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, move to accept the appeal.
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made to accept the appeal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-1. Councilor Blakey voting nay. Okay, it's now on to the public hearing, which is Appeal 01-13, an appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission decision to approve a conditional use permit to allow multifamily residential development in the R2 zoning district on approximately 10 acres of land located on the west side of 17th Street, the north side of Stewart Avenue, and the south side of Vineyard Drive. Now, before we start, we're going to hear from, is Mr. Lean here? Okay, and Mr. Benning's here? Okay. We're going to hear from the, there's actually two appeals on this, just so everybody knows that they both have different appeals going on. We'll try and have them both come up and testify. We have a sizable packet. We have the public record from the public hearing that was conducted by Planning and Zoning. We've got a lot of comments. We have received tonight 3 letters in support, or I'm sorry, in opposition to the conditional use, and there is 1 letter in support. And also we have a petition that was submitted containing 49 signatures that are opposed to the decision. Push the off button. Hey, I've been guilty too. Opposed to the decision taken by the City Planning and Zoning Commission on December 11th on the matter of conditional use 07-13. So we'll enter that into the record as well. So I guess we'll hear from, I guess we'll have Mr. Lean come down first, then Mr. Benning, and then we'll open it up to public testimony. As I said before, we've already got quite a bit of public testimony. If you have something new to add to the discussion, we certainly want to hear it. If you want to come up, state your name for the record and tell us that you were at the public hearing with Planning and Zoning and you just want to reaffirm your opinions, We'd appreciate those too, but please, again, in consideration of, we have quite a few people here tonight, so please kind of keep your comments brief. Thank you, sir. Name and address for the record, too. Okay.
Trying to get my thumb drive. Hi, my name is Patrick Lean. I live at 432 Stewart Avenue, and I'm here to appeal the conditional use permit.
Okay.
I've given you a packet of information. I appealed the conditional use permit on 7 points. The cover page is a summary of those points that I submitted with my appeal. Each one of those points is included in your packet. I'm going to go into some detail. I'm going to apologize in advance for reading to you. I'm going to attempt to show you some information on the screen at various points. I do have a couple of questions, Mr. Mayor. One, how do I address you? I've never been to, do I address only you, or can I?
No, you can trust the council.
Okay.
Or thank the council, or...
And then if I need clarification on anything during my time up here, can I ask the city planner for clarification on anything?
Certainly.
Okay. And then
City attorney?
my last question is, I have 7 points. Would you like me to stop at the end of each one for questions or clarification, or do you want me to just go to the end?
Why don't we, how about we'll see how it goes?
Okay. Give me just a second to see if I can get some information on the screen, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
can I make a request that the audience shut off all electronic devices
Yes.
during testimony?
Yeah, please. If you have them, please shut them off.
Pull the battery out.
Joel, is there a way that I make what's on the computer flash on the screen? Oh, okay. So again, page 1 is just the summary of the appeal points that I made. If you would please turn the page. The first point that I wanted to talk about was the communication to the public regarding public hearing on CU 0713 was not adequate. Prior to the public hearing on CU 0713, the City of Lewiston only notified property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. The city failed to adequately notify all residents within the area of impact. The City of Lewiston failed to notify and/or receive any feedback or findings from the Lewiston School District on how the proposed development would impact the local schools in the area. The City of Lewiston did not follow the guidance of the comprehensive plan in regards to communicating with the Lewiston School District. The City of Lewiston did not adequately follow Idaho Statute 676512 on local land use planning in regards to the area of impact in school districts. If you would turn in your packet, I have attachments for each one of the topics that I'm talking about. You have a packet that's labeled attachment number 1. And the supporting documents for my comments, the first page, I'll tell you what, I'll talk, and if you want to see it on the screen, please tell me. The first document is Idaho Statute 676512. It is local land use planning. I've highlighted a couple of areas in this statute. The first one is a special use permit may be granted to an applicant if the proposed use is conditionally permitted by the terms of the ordinance, subject to conditions pursuant to specific provisions of the ordinance, subject to the ability of political subdivisions, including school districts, to provide services for the proposed use, and when it is not in conflict with the plan. Further down in the statute, notwithstanding jurisdictional boundaries, notice shall also be provided to property owners or purchasers of record within the land being used, within the land being considered, 300 feet of the external boundaries of the land being considered, and any additional area that may be substantially impacted by the proposed special use as determined by the condition. So the city planner and I had a lengthy discussion about 300 feet. We had a short discussion about school districts, and here's my points. is the statute calls for communication with the school district. That was not done. The statute calls for 300 feet, and the city planner explained to me that they did that, and then they went so far as to explain to me how they did that. I then went and rented a tape measure, and I started measuring from the property line through my property to see how accurate it was. I guess on this particular point, I don't think they communicated to the extent that they needed to. We're not building a house, we're not building a garage. We're getting ready to put 144 units in a field across the street from my house. We're going to put 600 people in a field across the street from my house. And we did not consider the area of impact adequately and notify the appropriate number of people. We certainly didn't contact the school district and say, you're going to have X number of kids possibly showing up at McSorley Elementary School. What are you going to do about it? If you go to the second page in the attachment, an area highlighted is upon granting a special use permit, conditions may be attached to a special use permit, including but not limited to those. And there are 8 different areas listed. I want to read number 8. Requiring mitigation of effects of the proposed development upon service delivery by any political subdivision, including school districts, providing services within the planning jurisdiction. We got no feedback from the school district. We were vacating an alley previously tonight that was as big as my car, and the school district was contacted. That's my point. Prior to granting special use permits, studies may be required of the social, economical, fiscal, and environmental effects of the proposed special use. In the comprehensive plan, if you go to the next page, please, for attachment 1, under LU 16.2, this is goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan for the city of Lewiston. Cooperate with the Lewiston School District to maintain community roles in schools and facilities within the neighborhood. If you go to the next attachment, or the next page on your attachment, please. This is I think it's called a GIS map. This is what the city uses to show us property. And when I questioned the 300 feet, they were very helpful in showing me how the GIS was used and the process they go through to identify properties within 300 feet and how it automatically outlines them. And I said, okay, my neighbor, I thought he was closer than 300 feet. He was 306 feet. So I said, will you please show me where the property line is for the property in question on this map? And it was specific to the ravine that runs on the west side. And she says, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And I said, why? And she says, well, they're not that accurate. And she pointed me to the disclaimer in the bottom right corner of these maps, and I'm going to read it for you. The drawing is only a visual aid. Information such as property or lot lines and utility locations shown are approximate. The drawing should be used only for general knowledge, and no guarantee or warranty is expressed or implied for its accuracy. The licensed land surveyor should be hired to establish property lines. So while I was disputing where 300 feet was, the tool that they used is an estimate. Those are my points in attachment 1. I am requesting that the Lewiston City Council consider the following actions, please. And I'm back to item number 1 in my appeal. Deny the conditional use permit as the city did not follow appropriate notification standards for the public hearing on the conditional use permit. Send the application back to planning and zoning and require adequate notification to the property owners within the area of impact and the Lewiston School District. Require notification to the Lewiston School District on the proposal and get impact analysis and mitigation as a condition of the use permit. If they would have contacted the Lewiston School District, I'm estimating there's 600 people in this development. I'm estimating conservatively, let's say that a third of them are children. That's 200 kids. McSorley handle that, Jennifer handle that. Those are the 2 schools that are within that jurisdiction. If they would have checked with the school district, they might have known that McSorley has reduced their teachers over the last 3 years because their student population has decreased. I think there is significant impact to the Lewiston School District. I don't think that it was adequately addressed as part of the conditional use permit. That's item 1 of my appeal, gentlemen.
Mr. Mayor?
Are there any questions?
Is it appropriate to ask a question?
Certainly. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, sir, this same builder, the same contractor built a similar complex down on Southway
Yes, sir, you did.
back a while ago. Do you know what procedures he went through? Did he contact the school district or vice versa? What effects the Southway complex had on the school district?
I don't
and
believe
schools?
it's the builder's responsibility to contact the school district. It's the city of Lewiston's responsibility as part of the conditional use permit.
The second
But
part
I-
of the question was, what effects did that facility have on the school district?
I do not know. I do not know if the city of Lewiston contacted the school district as part of that building. I did no research on that because I was not a part of it. I did ask Mr. Plaskin directly after the conditional use hearing if he had contacted the school district, and his response to me was no.
Counselor Daniel.
Jamie, I apologize for doing this because I know you're probably getting this at the same time we are. Are we in conflict, anything that you're aware of, are you aware if we're in conflict with the state statute or city code as mentioned by?
Well, I think you have the statute before you, and I think you have to ask Mr. Plaskin what he did in order to notify people that were affected and meet the requirements of the statute. I was not a part of that process, so I can't answer that, but Mr. Plaskin might be able to.
Sir, I did ask Mr. Plaskin as part of the discussion about who he contacted and what process he followed, and he responded that they follow state and city code. And I believe he also said to me, and you can confirm this with him, that the city code can be more restrictive. What I took that to mean was if the state says you have to contact people within 300 feet, the city could say, I'm going to contact people within 500 feet or 1,000 feet. I do not believe it means if the state says you will contact people within 300 feet that you can say, no, I'm only going to do 200 feet. That would be less restrictive. The statute does, I think, guide in its wording around if the area of impact is great, then you need to contact a greater amount of people, and that's based on how the committee decides to do that. My argument is that was not even considered. If we were building a house or a garage, I think 300 feet is appropriate here. With the size of this development and the mass of this development and the impact on the neighborhood, I don't believe it is. I think that it has a greater area of impact, and we did not contact and get feedback from the appropriate amount of people, as well as the school district done. Any other questions, sir? I'm going to continue to item 2 on my appeal, so I'm going to ask you to look at that page in your packet, and then I'm also going to refer to some of the attachments that I've given you that are also labeled attachment 2. The second point of my appeal is the conditional use permit CU 0713 conflicts with the comprehensive plan for the City of Lewiston West Orchards neighborhood. The City of Lewiston comprehensive plan does not support this development on the following points. This development conflicts with multiple goals and objectives of the City of Lewiston comprehensive plan residential use. In the attachment, I'm going to refer to Chapter 6, and I'm going to refer to the goals and objectives listed on that first line. Stewart Avenue and Vineyard Avenue are designated as collector streets in the comprehensive plan. And refer to section 657 on that. Stewart Avenue and Vineyard Avenue do not meet the comprehensive plan standards for streets of this designation. Stewart Avenue and Vineyard Avenue do not meet the future requirements of the comprehensive plan for curb and gutter. The conditional use permit does not mitigate these issues, and no conditions were added by the Planning and Zoning Committee to mitigate these issues. If you would please look at attachment number 2, please. The first page is a extract from the comprehensive plan. This is the residential goals and objectives section. I've highlighted some that I think apply here. If you look at LU 14.2, within individual neighborhoods, discourage multifamily developments within established single-family developments. LU 15.1, review and revise development standards as appropriate to assure that new developments, additions, and remodels will maintain the design characteristics prevalent in the neighborhood. Such characteristics may include building height and massing. This is very important. Setbacks, lot coverage, lot size, and other characteristics that define a neighborhood. LU 15.3, continually review permitted, conditional, and prohibited uses to assure that the mix of uses allowed by a zoning ordinance does not adversely impact residential neighborhoods. Revise zoning ordinance as appropriate. LU 15.4, revise the zoning ordinance to reduce or eliminate commercial-type conditional uses in listed residential zones. LU 15.7, review the city's zoning ordinance to evaluate its effectiveness in preserving views and view corridors. Revise as appropriate and feasible. That one is near and dear to my heart. Maintains, LU 15.8, maintains strict enforcement of zoning, building, sign, and other development-related codes and ordinances. I'm going to refer back to that one a little bit later. Next page, please. LU 16.2, cooperate with the Lewiston School District to maintain community role of schools and facilities within the neighborhoods. This goes back to my first point, the goals and objectives. LU 17.2, facilitate pedestrian and bike use in neighborhoods. The collector streets I just mentioned, substandard, no curb, no sidewalk. Create pedestrian connections to other uses within and between neighborhoods where feasible. LU 18.2, I highlighted this one because honestly, I don't know what a neo-traditional neighborhood is. I thought maybe we could get some clarification on it. And finally, LU 19.2, review the city's zoning ordinance to assure the preservation of views and view corridors. It's so important they listed it twice. The comprehensive plan was written in 1999. It's 14 years old. These goals and objectives are not new. They've been there since the comprehensive plan was written. The Stewart and Vineyard Avenue that are collector streets, they were designated as substandard 14 years ago. They're substandard today. They were designated needing curb and gutter and sidewalk 14 years ago. They have no sidewalk, curb, and gutter today. All of the goals and objectives that I just read to you are in conflict with this development. These goals and objectives do not support this development by either the state of the infrastructure or the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan as written in 1999. If you please turn the page, comprehensive plan 6.5.1. This development is in the West Orchards neighborhood. If you will look on 6.5.2, bottom of the page I've highlighted, this neighborhood is the most densely developed in the orchards and generally meets or exceeds 4 units per acre. We're adding a high-density housing unit in the West Orchards, which is the highest density development in the orchards already. So we're taking a high-density neighborhood with substandard roads, and we're adding more to it. If you please turn to page 6.5-5. Under Transportation, Section D, I've highlighted Stewart Avenue between 4th and 5th Streets, Vineyard Avenue, Burrell Avenue, and 7th Street south of Burrell Avenue are classed as collector streets. Again, this is from the comprehensive plan. If you turn the page to 6.5-6, Section 4, I've highlighted larger interior parcels of land should be identified for future infill residential development in a density consistent with the surrounding homes. So the West Orchards density right now is 4 units per acre or greater. If you turn the page to 6.5-7, please. Item number 6. In general, streets and drainage systems in this neighborhood do not meet current standards for local or collector streets. If you go down to item C, curb, gutter, and sidewalk must be provided at and approaching schools and parks to provide safe places for children and parents to walk. Curb and gutter and sidewalk must also be provided along all streets with a classification of collector or arterial. Comprehensive plan written 14 years ago. Collector streets have no gutter, no sidewalk. The only thing that I can find in the comprehensive plan that supports this development is on page 6.5-9. And I'm sorry for the blotchiness. This is the best Staples could do for me. But on this map, in 1999, there was a corridor that was highlighted for future high-density development, and that corridor runs, I can show you here, I can try to pull it up, but it's basically this corridor right here is designated for high density. The left edge of that corridor runs right through my house. Those are the documents that I used for the points that I made on item number 2 in the conditional use permit conflicting with the comprehensive plan for the city of Lewiston. I'm requesting that the Lewiston City Council consider the following actions. Deny the conditional use permit as the application is not supported by or is in conflict on multiple points with the City of Lewiston comprehensive plan. Add additional conditions to the conditional use permit CU 0713 to mitigate conflicts with the comprehensive plan, such as add condition to CU 0713 to limit the development to 2 stories, to decrease the building height and massing. This will support the comprehensive plan goals and objectives and mitigate some of the impact to the surrounding neighbors and support the comprehensive plan goals and objectives to preserve views and view corridors. Add a condition to CU 0713 to require development to build first story in the ground. This is Daylight North Wall, and I'm going to show you some pictures of other developments in the area that show this, is to decrease the height and the mass of the structure and be more in harmony with the surrounding properties. This will also follow the building practices of other multifamily developments in the area. That's the end of the second topic of my appeal. Are there any questions? I know I'm trying to go through this fast. And any questions? Okay, I'm going to continue, sir. On that point, if I could just, I made a mention of daylighting basements, and there's multifamily developments in this neighborhood. This is a development that's just immediately to the west and north of the property in question. It's been there for a number of years. It's 2 stories. The thing I want to point out is it's built into the ground. It does not obstruct the view of the properties that are to the south of it. This is a development farther to the west, about a 1/4 mile. I think Mr. Plaskin referred to it during the conditional use permit hearing. It shows where the development is 2 stories and they've daylighted the basement to decrease the height of the structure. This is that same development from the side. Immediately to the south of that development is an older development of 3 buildings. Actually, I think it's more than 3 buildings. The bottom building in this development is 3 stories, but the lowest floor is daylighted. It's built into the ground and it's daylighted on the north side to take advantage of the slope. This is that same building from the side as you move up the grade on 14th Street. This is the topmost building in that development. As you can see, it's 2 stories. And again, that was to decrease the height restriction that it puts on or the height of the building in regards to the properties that are around it. This is immediately south of that development that I just showed you. I'm standing in the lowest elevation of the property that's immediately south of it. They still have a view. They still have a view because you got 2- and 3-story buildings that are put into the ground on the first story, and they take into consideration the properties that are around them. They're in what I call harmony with the neighborhood. Moving farther to the west, brand new development. I think it's in the last 5 years. This is off of Vineyard Drive. Going towards the bottom of the Grapevine, there was a series of buildings that were put in here. They excavated greater than 20 feet into the ground to build these buildings. As you drive along Vineyard Drive, they don't obstruct your view. To the west, This is directly across the street from the development. I'm standing in the front yard of the folks' property across the street. This picture shows that they still have views to the west. The buildings do not obstruct them. More of the same. And this is directly to the north, looking out across those buildings. And this is what's going up across the street from my house. 35 feet tall, 183 feet wide. This is the closest rendering I can get to what's being built that's actually something I can take a picture of. So I hope that gives you an idea. This is the building with another building behind it. Any questions on those photos that I just showed you? Okay, I'm going to move on to point number 3. Point number 3, the applicant for the conditional use permit CU 713 submitted false or incomplete information on the conditional use permit application. The application submitted for CU 713 contained incomplete traffic study results, as only peak time data was used. This analysis was then used to submit traffic patterns and flows at a volume less than the actual flows calculated by the City of Lewiston. The application submitted for CU 713 contained a buildable area of 11.9 acres. This area was then used to calculate density of the proposed development at an acceptable level of 12.1 units per acre, based on the builder's plans of 144 units. The builder did this even though they were aware of the area of the west of the development that is considered drainage and is not suitable for building. The City of Lewiston determined that the buildable area of the site at 9.4 acres and calculated a density of 15.3 units per acre. This is a 21% discrepancy. If you look at attachment 13 real quick, I provided a copy of the traffic study that was given to me as part of the builder's application. I think it was done by a local firm. I'm not sure about that. If you look at the second page of that, it shows peak trips per hour. I looked at this, and for the life of me, I can't find out what the traffic pattern is on Stewart or 17th or Vineyard. It lists adjacent side streets and generator streets. So I thought it was quite incomplete. I do have to say that through the course of our discussions at the conditional use permit, the traffic study came up multiple times, and the answer was always the same. Traffic study will be done as part of the building permit process. Here's my argument. When it gets to the building permit, I'm out of it. I have no recourse. I don't get to provide comment at a conditional use permit hearing. I don't get to appeal it. I'm requesting that the City of Lewiston, the Lewiston City Council consider the following actions. Deny the conditional use permit as the applicant submitted incomplete or erroneous data on the application. More importantly, modify condition number 8 of the conditional use permit to more clearly define the allowable density of the project. During the conditional use permit process, the Planning and Zoning Committee added 9 conditions. Condition number 8, in order to try to decrease the density of the project, is they put a limit on the density of 12.1 units per acre. And it's written in the conditional use permit exactly as I have it here. The density shall not exceed to 12.1 units per acre or less. What it doesn't say is on what buildable area. The builder submitted 15.9. The city calculated 9.4. The documentation since then says approximately 10. So those 3 numbers have a huge impact on how many units can be built in that field. If you use 12.1 at the 15.9 buildable acres, they can build 144 units. If you use the 9.4, which I think is appropriate, they can build 113. So what I'm asking the City Council to do is to clarify the condition that was added by Planning and Zoning, because the way it is written right now, You don't know what it means. I'm asking them to change it from the density shall not exceed 12.1 units per acre or less to the density shall not exceed 12.1 units per acre or less based on the city's calculation of 9.4 acres. That's what I'm asking for. Also to consider add a condition to CUO 713 to require a full traffic study be performed and reviewed for possible additional conditions to be added to the conditional use permit before it is issued to ensure that adequate mitigation is in place to protect the residents of the area. And again, my only chance is a conditional use permit or an appeal like this to give you my comments. Once it gets to the building permit and the traffic study is done, the term that I heard used was it's negotiable. And I'm not involved in the negotiations, and I don't like that because it impacts me and my family and my house and so forth. Those are my points on item number 3. Are there any questions? I'm going to move on to item number 4, Mr. Mayor.
And please remember that if we could get through this, because I think Mr. Benning is going to be addressing some of the same
understand, sir, and
concerns.
I'm
So
trying
I'd
to go
like
as quickly as
give
I
him
can.
his shot, too. Okay.
Item number 4, errors made by the Planning and Zoning Commission in consideration of CU 713. The plans submitted by the applicant do show compliance with the zoning requirements for building height, setback, lot coverage, and off-street parking, except for the provisions requiring 1 recreational vehicle or boat parking space per 3 dwelling units. This parking provision is a requirement of the zoning of the property. It is a requirement of the R2 zone. The Lewiston Planning and Zoning Committee, during the public hearing of the conditional use permit, incorrectly granted the applicant a variance to the zoning requirement by waiving this provision as a condition of the conditional use permit. The Planning and Zoning Committee acted inappropriately as the hearing was for a conditional use permit and not for a variance to the zoning requirement. If the applicant desires a variance to the zoning requirement, they must submit a variance request and have the appropriate public hearing on the variance. The applicant must show hardship not caused by themselves in order for the variance to be approved. We were at a conditional use permit hearing, and the Planning and Zoning Committee granted them a variance inappropriately. If you look at attachments for number 4, please. The very first page is from the staff report. I've outlined basically the same thing I just read that said they complied with the planning and zoning except for the parking for recreational vehicles and boat. If you go to the next page, I've printed the last page of the findings that were submitted by planning and zoning. And if you will look at number 9, which I've circled, or I've put a square around, the commission further agreed to remove the provision requiring 1 recreational vehicle or boat parking space per 3 dwelling units, and that provision be replaced with green space. This was not a provision. This is a requirement of the zone. And in order to change the zone, you got to get a variance. And in order to get a variance, you have to submit an application, you have to have a public hearing, and you have to show hardship. And they did not do that. The next 2 pages in your attachments are copies of 37-173, which just talked about the variance process. I've highlighted some of the text in there that talks about how variances can be granted only upon showing undue hardship because of characteristics of the site. A variance may not be approved when the conditions leading to the need for the variance are of the applicant's making. The reason that the applicant didn't have parking spots for boats and RVs is because the density was so high. They put the maximum number of buildings in that space. And the simple solution is decrease the density. If you go to the next page, section 37-176, before the Planning and Zoning Commission may act on a request for a variance, they shall hold a public hearing pursuant to the section, and it lists the section in the chapter. And again, I don't want to repeat myself. I don't think they followed the rules is what it comes down to. I'm requesting the Lewiston City Council consider the following actions. Deny the conditional use permit as Planning and Zoning Committee incorrectly granted a variance to zone requirements. If that's not acceptable, remove condition number 9 from the conditional use permit for the following reasons. Planning and Zoning granted the variance without a variance request or variance procedures being followed per section. It says 37-137, but it should be 37-173 of the Lewiston Code. The applicant has not submitted a variance request, and the applicant has not shown hardship not caused by themselves. Also to consider, add the condition to CUO 713 that requires the builder to comply with the parking requirement of the zone and allow the builder to mitigate the issue in their plan or to file a variance application and show hardship. Any questions on this one? All right, I'm moving on to number 5. Harmony and density criteria by the city planner were not addressed or mitigated by planning and zoning. The proposed development is scaled at nearly the maximum density allowed for the building area per R2 zoning requirements of the property. The City of Lewiston calculated 144 units on 9.4 buildable acres. The result is the density of 15.3 units per acre, where the current R2 zoning allows 15.4 units per acre as the maximum. The proposed buildings are going to be 3 stories tall and 183 feet wide. This is going to be the single biggest multifamily housing development in the Orchards. I drove around and I can't find one bigger. These proposed buildings do not fit with any of the surrounding single-family homes. These buildings are not comparable to any of the other multifamily developments in the West Orchards in that they do not take into consideration the adverse impacts the buildings will have at the highest elevation of the property. Other properties of this kind are scaled in size, where the structures are built into the ground on the first level to take advantage of the slope and are decreased in height at the highest elevations as to not overpower the surrounding neighborhood and preserve the views of the properties surrounding the development. The City of Lewiston has stated that the R2 zone allows a density of 15.4 units per acre. Research of the Lewiston zoning section 3728 shows the following restrictions for granting a conditional use permit in an R2 residential zone. This is specific for granting the conditional use permit in the R2 zone. Multifamily dwelling meeting the standards of section 37-124.1 of this code, and where density does not exceed 15 4/10 units per acre, when fronting a minimum 50-foot wide improved public right-of-way. This is the section of the code that the city planner used in calculating for density of 15.4. 15.4 units per acre when fronting a minimum 50-foot wide improved public right-of-way. The next section, multifamily dwellings meeting standards of section 37-124.1 of this code, and where density does not exceed 8 7/10 units per acre, when fronting an improved public right-of-way less than 50 feet wide. I live on Stewart Avenue. This development is going to build a brand new road coming out of it that's going to exit onto Stewart Avenue. The nearest improved public right-of-way is Stewart Avenue to at least half of these buildings. Stewart Avenue is 28 feet wide. It's substandard. No sidewalks, no curb, no gutter, 28 feet wide. Now, I looked up the definition of public right-of-way, and it says it's a road that is deeded or owned by the city. The road that's coming out of the development is a private road. It's not owned by the city. So again, the nearest right-of-way, Stewart Avenue, less than 50 feet wide, that caps the density at 8.7, not 15.4. The nearest improved public right-of-way is Stewart Avenue, or for some of the proposed bill. I think I've read all of this. The Lewiston City Planner did not make the Planning and Zoning Committee aware of this issue, and Planning and Zoning did not put any conditions to mitigate the issue into the conditional use permit. I went back through the public hearing. It was this part was never mentioned. We always stuck on 15.4. We never talked about the right-of-way. We never talked about the 50-foot. If you'll look at the attachments for number 5, please. If you look at the bottom of the first page, the property is currently zoned for single-family residential use outright, multifamily use by conditional use permit designated for high-density residential use in the comprehensive plan. The applicant states the property is 11.9 acres. However, staff calculation deduced that it's 9.4 acres. The applicable R2 zoning district allows 15.4 units per acre. I just wanted to point that out. If you look at the next page, it is the last page of the findings from the comprehensive plan, where it lists the density will not exceed 12.1 units per acre. This is the same condition that I referred to in my last point, where I wanted it clarified as to what area it would be calculated on. And the final page shows the same two items as part of 3728 conditional use permitted, where it talks about the 15.4 at 50 feet of a right-of-way and 8.7 at less than 50 feet of a right-of-way. I'm requesting that the Lewiston City Council consider the following actions. Deny the conditional use permit as the proposed development far exceeds the allowed density for the R2 zone because of the substandard condition of the public right-of-way, Stewart Avenue. Modify condition 8 of the conditional use permit to correctly define the allowable density of the project based on zoning section 3728. And what I'm asking is that the density shall not exceed 12.1 units per acre. I would like that changed to the density shall not exceed 8.7 units per acre or less based on the city's calculation of 9.4 acres. Add a condition to the conditional use permit that requires the builder to modify and or improve Stewart Avenue to conform to the 50 feet right-of-way standards of zoning section 3728 for the entire length of the Collector Street designation between 5th Street and where it connects with the Collector Street of Vineyard Avenue, or that should say 14th Street, I apologize. Make condition 8 in CU 0713 dependent on this condition. What I'm saying here is if they want to make the road 50 feet wide and improve it along its entire collector right-of-way, then they should be able to build at that 15.4. If they don't, it should be 8.7. Any questions on these points? I'm moving on to number 6. Injury and harm to adjacent property owner at 432 Stewart Avenue was not addressed or mitigated by the Planning and Zoning Committee. My residence is located at 432 Stewart Avenue. My property is directly across the street from the proposed development. The builder stated in his application the development of the site does not adversely impact any adjacent developed neighborhoods. During the public hearing, the Planning and Zoning Committee determined that the proposed use will not be injurious or detrimental to adjoining properties. Neither the applicant, the City of Lewiston, or the Planning and Zoning Committee offered any documentation, factual testimony, or expert opinion on which to base their determination. They just showed up and said it. Based on these baseless comments, the Planning and Zoning Committee did not put any additional conditions in the conditional use permit to mitigate the impact to myself and my property. Below are some facts about my property and how the proposed development will impact me, my family, and my property. My property is directly across the street from the proposed development. My property sits directly across from the new proposed boulevard that the builder plans to have exit on Stewart Avenue. My property is 186 feet wide and 263 feet deep. And 100% of my property faces the planned development. My property is over 1.2 acres and is the largest developed property in the 400 block of Stewart Avenue. My house was built in 1912. It's the oldest house in the 400 block of Stewart Avenue. My house is over 3,200 square feet and is arguably the largest house in the 400 block of Stewart Avenue. I purchased my house in 1997 and subsequently refurbished and restored the entire house. That's 2 years before the comprehensive plan. I spent in excess of $200,000 on my house and my property. My house has an outstanding view of the entire valley. The county assessment considers the view from my property as excellent in determining the value of my property. The assessed value of my property by Nez Perce County is $200,000. The insurance estimate for replacement value on my house is $315,000 for house and other structures. The market value assessment that I had done after the market value assessment of my house is projected at $280,000 to $300,000. The market assessment value after the proposed development is built is projected to be $230,000 to $250,000. My documentation shows that the value of my property will decrease by as much as $50,000. What I have today versus what I have tomorrow. Today I have 0 people living in the field across the street from my house. Tomorrow there's going to be up 600 plus people living across the street from me. Today I have an incredible and excellent view of the entire valley from my property. Tomorrow I will have 6 30-foot high, 183-foot wide buildings directly across from my house obstructing my view. Today there are no roads intersecting with Stewart Avenue in front of my house. Tomorrow I'll have a boulevard exiting directly in front of my house with 400 to 1,000 vehicle trips a day. Today I have 0 headlights coming into my house at night from traffic on Stewart Avenue. My house faces north, traffic's east-west. Tomorrow I'll have 400 to 1,000 vehicles a day exit the development across the street from me with their headlights pointed into my house as they drive up the boulevard and exit on Stewart Avenue. Today I have no street light directly across from my house that will shine in the second story of my house. Tomorrow I will have a nice bright street light directly across the street that will shine directly into my bedroom all night long. My property is unique in that it is the only property that is directly across the street from the new boulevard that the builder is proposing. And my property is directly facing the southern edge of the development. My property is one of the largest, most desirable lots in my neighborhood. From the facts that I've provided on my property, I hope that you can get an idea of what I have today. From the changes that are being proposed, I hope that you can get an idea of what is going to happen to my property if this project moves forward as is. From the market value report, you can see how the real estate professional values my property today and how it will be valued after this development is complete. The house is the single biggest investment of my life. I believe the information that I've provided clearly shows that this development will do me harm. The applicant, the City of Lewiston, and the Planning and Zoning Committee have offered no documentation, no factual testimony, and no expert opinion on which to base their determinations that I will not be harmed. If you look at the attachments, please, in number 6, the first attachment is the county's assessment of my house. I've circled 2 things on the page. One is the assessed value of my house at $200,000. The second one at the bottom middle of the page is under the view. There is an E there that stands for excellent. The county assessor says I have an excellent view from my house. The next page is just the insurance value of my house, $287,000. The next page is the market value report that I had done by a real estate professional. I can read it to you if you would like. The crux of it says that the value of my property is going to drop $50,000. The next page is under this is from the findings of the comprehensive plan. Under the section conclusion of law, the proposed use will not result in conditions which tend to generate nuisance, including but not limited to noise, dust, glare, vibration, odors, and the like. And then at the bottom of the page, the proposed use will not be injurious or detrimental to adjoining properties or the neighborhood. I'd just like to show you a couple of pictures, if I could, please. This is my house. I'm standing in the middle of that field where they're going to develop this. I'm looking back at my house. This is where that boulevard is going to go in. This is my house looking northwest over towards the Blue Bridge and Costco. It's my house looking directly north. My house looking to the north, starting to go toward the east over Clo TV. This is what's coming. I'm requesting that the Lewiston City Council consider the following actions. Deny the conditional use permit as the proposed development will do harm to the property at 432 Stewart Avenue that has not been mitigated by the conditional use permit. Add condition to CU 713 to require the applicant to provide evidence to support the assertion that the development will have no adverse impact on the property at 432 Stewart Avenue. Add the condition for the same thing for the city, to show evidence that I'm not going to be impacted. Add the condition requiring the Planning and Zoning Committee to provide evidence to support their findings that I will not be impacted. Add a condition to remove the boulevard from exiting onto Stewart Avenue. This condition will mitigate the impact of the property at 432 Stewart Avenue. Get rid of the road. That's what I'm saying. Add a condition to decrease the buildings to 2 stories to decrease the height, density, traffic, and noise on the surrounding neighborhood and mitigate the impact of my property. Add a condition to CU 713 that requires the builder to put barriers, walls, shrubs at 432 Stewart Avenue to block the headlights from 500 to 1,000 cars per day exiting the development onto Stewart Avenue. This condition will mitigate the impact of my property. Questions? Yes, sir.
Yes. Regarding the apartment complex that Councilor Blakey brought up earlier, have you done any research in terms of have the values decreased in similar properties around that area?
I don't know, sir. No. But I don't live there, so I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how those folks' views are obstructed. I don't know if any of those folks have a brand-new boulevard with 500 to 1,000 cars a day coming out in front of their house. So I don't know anything about those people. What I do know, and the facts that I have gathered are here in front of you. And I didn't come here today to say you're going to decrease the property values of everybody that lives around this development. I'm specific to my property, and I'm doing that because that road comes out right at the end of my driveway. Those cars are coming right up my driveway. So I focused on my house because that's what I have the most information about. That's the view that I have. I don't know that the 2 buildings are comparable in size or what the height requirement was for that other building. So I don't know that they're comparable. I do know that they're roughly the same width, and that's why I use them as a reference to say this is how big this building's going to be. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for bearing with me. I have one more.
Well, I was going to say, Mr. Lane, on your point number 7, as I'm going through this, if you could just highlight it, because you basically covered almost everything in your previous section 2,
And
3.
I want to say that it's super important.
Okay.
And because it was one of the criteria that the Planning and Zoning Committee needed to consider in the conditional use permit. My appeal is based on safety concern for the area of impact were not mitigated by the builder, the city, or the Planning and Zoning Committee. There's not one condition that was added to the conditional use permit to ensure the safety of my neighborhood. The comprehensive plan is written in '99. It's 14 years old. It hasn't been updated. I've already talked about the streets. And that's really what it comes down to, is the builder the planned development is going to add between 324 and 810 people to the property directly adjacent to Stewart Avenue. The planned development is going to provide a new boulevard exiting directly onto Stewart Avenue. This is going to result in additional car, bike, and pedestrian traffic on Stewart Avenue and Vineyard Avenue where there are no sidewalks. The city code, the builder is responsible for, per the city code, the builder is responsible for curb and gutter along the property line of the development. And here's my point, is he's going to do 400 foot of curb and gutter sidewalk along the edge of his development on Stewart Avenue. That leaves 1,100 feet roughly. I got my little wheel out and I measured it until I almost got hit by a car. That has no curb, has no sidewalk. That road's 28 feet wide. So basically, we put 600 plus people in that field. We built them a street to go to Stewart Avenue. We give them a sidewalk that goes right to the edge of the property, and then they're on their own. That's going to be kids walking to school. That's going to be kids going to Walker Field. That's going to be me and my wife waddling down the street to go walk around the track. The comprehensive plan's 14 years old. Called those roads substandard 14 years ago, and it's done nothing to upgrade them. They're just as substandard today as they were then. So I'll skip the attachments because I think you've seen most of them. Here's what I'm requesting. And let me just make a point here, and I'm going to tell you up front, it's for effect. This development, as proposed, is going to add a potential 1,000 chances a day for a car to kill a kid on Stewart Avenue. There's 1,100 feet until they get to top of 14th, where they're going to be walking, riding in the middle of the road. Deny the conditional use. I'm requesting that the Lewiston City Council consider the following actions. Deny the conditional use permit as proposed, as the proposed development is not supported by the comprehensive plan and that the collector streets of Stewart and Vineyard are not built to acceptable standards per the comprehensive plan and will create an unsafe environment on these collector streets with no sidewalks and a very narrow roadway. Add a condition to remove the designated boulevard in the development from exit on Stewart Avenue. It's a substandard street. If you don't want to funnel people there and create this problem, don't exit on Stewart Avenue. Add a condition to require the applicant to provide sidewalk, curb, and gutter for the entire length of the 400 block of Stewart Avenue as it is designated as a collector street to where it meets with Vineyard Avenue or 14th Street. This is approximately 1,100 feet past the west end of the designated development. I'm just asking them to put the sidewalk in to Stewart so they can get off Stewart and get onto 14th. Or they can go up 4th Street to Walker Field. Still doesn't take care of the Grapevine. I don't know how you're ever going to put a sidewalk on there. I don't even know why it's called a collector street. Add a condition to require the city of Lewiston or the builder to provide a proposal as how to deal with the increased pedestrian traffic on the collector street of Vineyard Avenue. The conditional use permit, one of the criteria is that they have to protect the people in that neighborhood. That's one of the criteria they have to consider. In order for them to build in the zone, we got to add conditions to make sure that we're okay. And I don't think that they adequately did that. There's not one condition that was added. There was a discussion where the builder was asked, how much curb and gutter and sidewalk are you going to build? And the response from the engineer was, by code, we're required to build along the edge of our property. That's part of the zone. That has nothing to do with the conditional use permit. If the Planning and Zoning Committee would simply have added the condition that the builder is responsible for adding the sidewalk to that collector street, it works. Plus, we're enhancing the comprehensive plan because we're taking a street that's substandard, that's a collector street that was designated for this 14 years ago, and we're bringing it up to specs. One condition. We protect us, we get the street right, we move on. I think I'm done. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you for hearing me. I know that I read a lot, but I appreciate it.
You bet. Mr. Benning? Should we take a brief?
You want to take a break before I get
That's
started?
what I was going to say. We're going to be sitting down for a little while. We might well take a 5-minute break.
Sure. Give me a chance to set up.